Lyra had not slept in years. On her world of Lysara, nights stretched long and silent, but for her, the darkness was not peaceful, it was endless. Her silver-blue skin glimmered faintly under the twin moons, reflecting the soft lights of the crystalline city around her. Yet inside, her heart thumped like a drum in a vast, empty hall. Every time she closed her eyes, a storm of thoughts and fears raced through her mind. Faces of strangers, memories of failed attempts to rest, the fear that she would never feel the gentle embrace of sleep again, all of it consumed her. The elders of her city whispered about her sleeplessness. "It is unnatural," they said, "perhaps a curse from the stars themselves." Lyra had long stopped trying to argue. She wandered the silent streets alone, her tall, graceful frame moving like a shadow over the glowing walkways. The light of the moons danced on the spires and towers, but it offered no comfort to her restless mind. She had tried every ritual, every herb, every method her people knew, yet nothing brought relief. Each night she lay in her glass-like chamber, staring at the ceiling, her eyes wide and unblinking, as if willing herself to finally surrender to sleep. Her loneliness pressed on her like a heavy stone. Even among other Lysarans, she felt isolated. Their laughter, their quiet bedtime routines, even their dreams, all of it seemed like a world she could never reach. Sometimes she would watch them through the city squares, their forms flickering in the moonlight, and envy twisted inside her. Sleep had become a memory, a fleeting thing that seemed to exist only for others. The nights grew colder, the air heavier, and still her mind refused to rest. Lyra often wandered to the cliffs on the edge of the city, where the wind howled and the moons hung low over the alien horizon. There she would stare at the far stars, those tiny points of light that seemed so far yet so near in their steady glow. She longed to join them, to escape the racing thoughts, the constant tension inside her chest. "Why can't I be like them?" she whispered to the empty sky. "Why am I trapped in my own mind?" No answer came, only the soft hiss of the wind and the faint hum of the city below. Some nights she imagined a visitor might come, someone who could understand her. But it was a fragile hope, one she dared not believe in because reality had never delivered such comfort. Lyra had grown used to the cold solitude, the way the shadows clung to her, the way her reflection in the polished floors stared back like a stranger. Yet deep inside, a small ember of longing still flickered. She wanted warmth, someone who could ease the relentless thoughts that tormented her. She wanted to feel that gentle pause, that peace others felt so easily. Her routine became a silent struggle. She would walk through the quiet streets, touching the smooth surfaces of the towers, listening to the soft vibrations of the city and trying to coax herself into calm. Sometimes it worked for moments, seconds where her breath slowed and her muscles relaxed, but sleep always slipped away, like a river running through her fingers. Frustration built with each failed attempt, and a deep sadness grew inside her, heavy and relentless. On this night, Lyra found herself standing in the central plaza, the largest crystals in the city glowing faintly around her. The light shimmered across her skin, painting her in soft blues and silvers. She closed her eyes briefly, imagining the sensation of sleep, a warmth, a release, a quiet mind. She opened them again, disappointment washing over her. She sighed, a sound carried softly by the night wind, and whispered again to the stars, "Will I ever rest?" The answer remained silent, and the endless night pressed on, stretching her loneliness like a shadow that refused to end. The silence of Lysara was broken one morning by a hum that felt different from the usual wind through the crystalline towers. Lyra was wandering near the outskirts, as she often did when the sleepless nights weighed too heavily on her. The hum grew louder, vibrating through the ground beneath her feet, and a strange light appeared on the horizon. It was not the gentle glow of the twin moons, nor the familiar shimmer of the city. This light moved with purpose, cutting through the sky like a comet, and Lyra froze, her violet eyes wide with both fear and curiosity. A ship unlike any Lysaran vessel descended slowly, its hull shimmering with strange patterns that shifted like liquid metal. It landed with a soft thud on the outskirts of the city, leaving a faint trail of glowing particles in the air. The city's inhabitants stayed inside, whispering rumors to each other through closed doors. Few Lysarans had ever seen a human ship. Humans were rare visitors, explorers from a distant world, often only spoken about in stories passed down by elders. Lyra felt her heart race. She had spent so long alone in the endless nights that the idea of another being, someone entirely different from her own kind, sparked a strange mix of excitement and fear. From the ship emerged a man. He moved with a calm, deliberate grace that immediately caught her attention. His skin was pale under Lysara's moonlight, his hair dark, and his eyes soft yet observant. Lyra had never seen a human in person, only in stories, yet something about him felt familiar. He paused at the edge of the landing, scanning the crystalline towers with quiet awe, then his gaze landed on her. For a moment their eyes met, and Lyra felt a shiver run through her. There was no judgment in his look, no fear or misunderstanding, only gentle curiosity. The man stepped forward slowly, hands raised in a gesture of peace. Lyra instinctively tensed, but she did not run. The years of isolation had made her wary, but something about this stranger seemed different. She tilted her head, studying him. The hum of the city faded in her mind, replaced by a steady rhythm she could not identify. Her chest tightened, not with fear but with an unfamiliar sense of anticipation. He took another step, smiling softly, and she realized he meant no harm. He tried to speak, his words strange to her ears, but his tone was soothing, like a soft melody in the otherwise endless night. Lyra didn't understand his language, yet she felt a connection forming in the space between them. He moved closer, and instead of stepping into the city's strict boundaries, he waited, allowing her to decide if he should approach further. His patience was different from anything she had known. Lysarans often rushed, pushing boundaries and expecting compliance. This human seemed to understand hesitation, loneliness, and respect without needing words. Lyra found herself lowering her defenses, a small flicker of hope stirring inside her. Could this stranger, a human, truly be different from the endless shadows she had known? Could someone from another world bring what her own world could not, understanding and calm? She swallowed hard, feeling her throat tight, and finally nodded, motioning for him to follow her. He obeyed without question, a soft smile on his face, and together they began walking toward the heart of the city. The streets felt different with him beside her. Normally, they were cold and lifeless, but now she noticed subtle beauty. The way the light reflected on the crystalline towers, the gentle hum of energy coursing through the ground. She felt a strange warmth she hadn't experienced in years, a tiny spark of hope that perhaps the endless nights would not last forever. For the first time, she imagined what it might be like to have someone beside her in the quiet, someone who could understand the storms inside her mind. As they walked, Lyra realized something astonishing. She was not afraid. She had spent so long in isolation, trapped by sleepless nights and endless thoughts, yet the presence of this human made the world seem larger, kinder, and more alive. And for the first time in countless moons, she allowed herself to wonder, could this be the beginning of a change? A chance to finally find rest. Lyra led the human, Elias, through the winding streets of Lysara. The crystalline towers reflected soft, shifting colors as the twin moons passed overhead, but for the first time in years, Lyra noticed them not as cold structures, but as something alive, almost magical. Her steps were lighter, and though her mind still raced with endless thoughts, she felt a strange calm whenever Elias stayed near. His presence was gentle, steady, and somehow familiar despite coming from a world so distant from hers. She showed him the central plaza, where the tallest crystal spires rose like frozen lightning into the sky. Normally, this place reminded her of loneliness, the emptiness of space mirrored in every gleaming surface. But now, with him beside her, the plaza felt warm. Elias reached out, touching one of the low crystals lightly. It hummed under his fingers, a faint vibration that Lyra had never noticed before. She tilted her head, curious, watching as the vibration spread through the ground and echoed in her chest. She felt a shiver of something she had not experienced in years: comfort. He noticed her gaze and smiled softly, though he said nothing. Words were unnecessary at first. Sometimes, humans spoke in ways that went beyond language, and Lyra realized she understood him in ways her own people had never taught her. She led him to her chamber, a tall, glass-like room perched atop one of the smaller towers. Normally, the room reminded her of failure. She had spent countless nights staring at the ceiling, unable to rest, her body tense and her mind buzzing. But Elias followed her with careful steps, his eyes filled with patience, and Lyra felt a flicker of hope she hadn't felt in years. She stepped inside and he observed quietly. Her chamber was filled with soft lights that pulsed like slow heartbeats, yet they had never helped her. Elias knelt by a glowing console and placed his hands on it, adjusting the small levers with precision. A vibration traveled through the floor, soft and rhythmic. Lyra froze, listening. Her body reacted instantly, a shiver moving through her spine, the first real sensation of calm she had felt in a long time. It was subtle, almost too delicate to notice, but it was enough to make her pause. Elias looked up at her, eyes warm. He gestured for her to sit on the floor and she did, her legs folding beneath her. The vibrations continued and she closed her eyes for a moment, listening. Each pulse seemed to match the rhythm of her heartbeat, easing the tension that had never left her. She let out a shaky breath, tears forming at the corners of her eyes. She hadn't cried in years, not from pain, but from exhaustion, loneliness, and despair. Now she felt something new, release. The night passed quietly. Lyra and Elias did not speak much. His presence alone was enough. He would adjust the vibrations, sometimes humming softly, and she would sit in silence, feeling her body grow heavier, her mind a little less chaotic. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, Lyra allowed herself to relax fully. She even dared to imagine sleep, something she had almost forgotten existed. Later, Lyra sat by the window of her chamber, watching the moons drift across the sky. Elias stood nearby, speaking softly in his language, but she did not need to understand the words. She felt them in the way he moved, the gentleness in his hands, the quiet patience in his posture. The endless nights had seemed eternal, but now there was a hint of change. Something was shifting inside her, hope, warmth, and the strange notion that perhaps sleep was not forever out of reach. For the first time, Lyra realized that comfort did not always come from rituals, herbs, or familiar surroundings. Sometimes it came from connection, from someone who understood, who did not judge, who simply existed alongside her. Elias had brought her that. She did not yet know if she could sleep, but the tight coil of anxiety in her chest had loosened. She felt lighter, freer, and for the first time in years she dared to smile. And as the soft vibrations continued through the night, Lyra closed her eyes, not to sleep yet but to rest. Just a little, just enough to feel the difference. Just enough to imagine that one day, perhaps, the endless nights might finally end. Days passed on Lysara, but Lyra's nights remained long and restless. Yet with Elias by her side, she felt a subtle shift inside herself, like a tiny spark trying to catch fire. He had learned the rhythms of her body, the subtle patterns of her agitation, and each night he adjusted the vibrations of the crystal floor, the hum of the chambers, and the soft harmonics he carried with him from his world. Slowly, cautiously, Lyra began to notice a change. The tight coil in her chest loosened. Her thoughts, though still active, no longer raced like wild comets through her mind. One evening, as the twin moons rose high above the crystalline towers, Elias brought a small device with him into her chamber. It was round and smooth, glowing faintly with gentle pulses. He placed it carefully near the center of the floor and activated it. The device began to emit harmonic tones, low, steady vibrations that reminded Lyra of a heartbeat. Her body, unaccustomed to such rhythms, stiffened at first, but then her chest began to match the pulse. A warmth spread through her, not physical heat, but a comforting energy that seeped into her mind and soul. She felt herself relax in a way she had not for years. Elias knelt beside her, his hand brushing hers briefly in a gesture of reassurance. Lyra's heart pounded, not with fear this time, but with wonder. The sensation was strange, new, and entirely foreign to her, yet she wanted it. She allowed herself to lean back against the smooth crystal floor, eyes closing just a fraction. The world felt softer, gentler, as if the constant pressure of sleepless nights had begun to lift. She could hear Elia's humming softly, a sound that vibrated through her very being, blending with the tone of the device. For the first time, she dared to imagine something she had long forgotten: sleep. That night, Lyra's first dreams began to stir. They were faint at first, fragmented images of light, water, and motion. She saw vast oceans stretching to horizons she had never known, waves glittering under alien suns, humans walking through the sand beside her, and strange floating cities made of crystal and metal. Her mind, unaccustomed to rest, swirled in this new experience, yet it was gentle rather than chaotic. She shivered with awe, feeling the calm she had long sought. Elias remained near, observing silently, never pushing, only supporting her with quiet presence. She awoke briefly, startled by the unfamiliar sensation of stillness. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the device. Her chest felt lighter, her mind less crowded. A tear ran down her cheek, not of sadness but of release. She realized that for the first time in years her mind had paused. She had glimpsed the possibility of rest, of dreams, of quiet. She glanced at Elias, whose eyes met hers with soft encouragement. In that glance she felt an unspoken promise. She was not alone, and sleep was no longer a distant, impossible dream. Over the next nights the dreams grew stronger. She traveled through stars and seas, floated among the glowing clouds of Lysara, and even laughed softly in her sleep, a sound she had not made in years. Each night, Elias adjusted the tones, the vibrations, and the gentle rhythms, always patient, always calm. Lyra began to recognize patterns in the dreams, small threads of understanding connecting the imagined worlds with her own reality. She felt a sense of control returning, and with it, a small but profound hope. By the time the moons had passed halfway through their cycle, Lyra's nights were no longer a battlefield. They were still strange, still new, but now filled with possibility. The endless racing of thoughts had slowed. The storm inside her was breaking, leaving clear skies in its place. For the first time in countless moons, she felt she could face the night without fear. She realized that sleep, something she had long thought forever lost, was beginning to return. And in those first tentative dreams, Lyra allowed herself to hope, not just for rest, but for life, for companionship, and for the quiet joy of being understood. The night came quietly on Lysara, softer than any Lyra had known in years. The twin moons hung low, casting pale silver light across the crystalline towers. For the first time in her life, she felt a strange anticipation for the night rather than dread. Elias had prepared the chamber carefully, adjusting the vibrations, harmonics, and soft pulses that had already begun to calm her restless mind. Lyra stood in the center of the room, her eyes closed briefly as she felt the energy around her, sensing the difference from all the nights before. She lay down on the smooth crystal floor, letting herself sink into the gentle vibrations. The hum of the device blended with the faint pulse of her own heartbeat, creating a rhythm that felt almost like a lullaby. For the first time in countless moons, her muscles relaxed. The tension in her shoulders and back eased, the knot in her chest loosening as if it had never existed. She inhaled deeply, feeling the air in the chamber fill her with warmth she had almost forgotten was possible. Elias sat quietly nearby, watching her with soft, steady eyes. He had learned the patterns of her restlessness, the subtle moments when anxiety threatened to pull her away from calm, and he adjusted the tones and vibrations with care. Lyra felt safe, more than she had ever felt before. For the first time, she realized that sleep was not only a physical release but an emotional one, a surrender to trust and presence. Minutes stretched, and Lyra's eyelids grew heavier. Her mind, which had never stopped racing, began to slow. Thoughts that had once flashed like lightning across her consciousness now settled like gentle ripples in a quiet pond. She remembered faces, places, and moments from her life, not with panic but with clarity. Emotions she had buried under years of sleeplessness surfaced, small joys, fleeting laughter, faint echoes of memories that made her smile. It was overwhelming and beautiful all at once. Then it happened. The first real dream came, vivid and alive. Lyra floated above Lysara, but the towers seemed alive now, their light warm and inviting rather than cold and distant. Stars stretched across the sky, more vibrant than she had ever seen, and in the distance she saw oceans she had never known, waves sparkling like liquid silver. Elias appeared in the dream, smiling at her from the shore, his presence steady and reassuring. She reached out, feeling the warmth of connection, and in that moment every fear, every restless thought melted away. She stirred softly, a whisper escaping her lips. Tears ran down her cheeks, not from sadness but from relief so deep it startled her. The sleepless nights that had defined her existence for so long, the endless wandering through dark streets, the isolation that had pressed on her like a heavy stone, all of it had led to this. The first true night of rest, the first night she allowed herself to dream freely, was hers. The storm inside her had calmed. Her body felt weightless, her mind at peace. When the moons shifted, Lyra awoke slowly. For the first time she did not panic. She did not feel the crushing pressure of wakefulness pressing on her. Instead, she lay still, savoring the afterglow of sleep. Her body hummed with energy she had not known in years. Elias watched her, his expression gentle and proud, and Lyra understood without words that she was not alone. She had trusted another being with her deepest vulnerability, and that trust had returned a gift she had long thought impossible: rest. The city outside remained quiet, but inside Lyra's chamber something had changed forever. The girl who had wandered alone for endless nights, who had once thought sleep a distant dream, had finally found peace. And in that first night of true rest, she discovered something even greater: the quiet, extraordinary power of connection. Lyra smiled through her tears, a small, trembling smile that spoke of relief, gratitude, and hope. For the first time she knew the endless nights could end. She had slept, truly slept, and the world, her world, felt different because of it. The following days felt like a new world for Lyra. The sleepless nights that had haunted her for so long were gone, replaced with mornings that felt gentle rather than heavy. She woke refreshed, her body buzzing with energy she had not felt in years. The soft light of the twin moons, the sparkling crystalline towers, and even the quiet hum of the city now seemed full of life and possibility. But the most remarkable change was not in her surroundings. It was in herself. She felt lighter, braver, and for the first time, capable of living fully rather than merely surviving. Elias remained by her side, though never imposing. He explored the city alongside her, curious about every detail, yet patient when Lyra needed space. His presence was steady, a constant thread of comfort that she could rely on without hesitation. She discovered that she no longer feared her own mind at night, no longer felt the oppressive loneliness that had consumed her for years. And in that newfound peace, she began to laugh. It was a sound that startled even her, soft and musical, bouncing off the crystalline towers, carrying warmth into the silent streets. She led Elias to the tallest tower one morning, where the view stretched across the entire city. Crystals glimmered in every shade of pale blue and violet, reflecting the soft glow of the moons. Lyra stood at the edge of the platform, arms open, inhaling deeply. The wind tugged gently at her hair, lifting it in shimmering waves, and for the first time she felt completely free. Elias approached quietly, placing a hand on her shoulder. She looked at him, her violet eyes full of gratitude and awe. No words were needed. They understood each other in the quiet language of shared experience and trust. The citizens of Lysara began to notice the change in her. The girl who had once wandered the streets endlessly, restless and isolated, now moved with calm confidence. She spoke to elders and peers with ease, no longer weighed down by fear or anxiety. Some whispered in astonishment about the human who had come to their world and somehow helped her, but Lyra no longer worried about their words. She had learned the extraordinary power of connection, the way it could bridge worlds, cultures, and even species. Each night the chamber where she had once struggled to sleep became a sanctuary. The vibrations, the soft harmonics, and Elias' quiet presence were still part of her routine, but they were no longer a crutch. They were a reminder that life could be gentle, that care and patience could create miracles in the most stubborn hearts. Lyra allowed herself to dream freely now, exploring visions of distant stars, oceans, and forests she had never known. Her imagination was vibrant, her mind sharp, and yet filled with the calm she had never believed possible. One evening, as the moons drifted low over the city, Lyra and Elias walked through the central plaza. Crystals glimmered softly beneath their feet, and the gentle hum of energy filled the air. Lyra laughed again, a clear, pure sound, and Elias mirrored her smile. She realized that in these quiet moments, the bond between them had grown deeper than she could have imagined. It was not just trust, it was friendship, connection, and understanding that transcended the limits of species. She paused at a fountain that sparkled with liquid crystal, watching the water ripple in patterns she could almost understand. "I never thought this could happen," she said softly, almost to herself. Elias nodded, offering a comforting squeeze to her hand. No words were needed to convey the truth. The endless nights were behind her, and now life was filled with light, hope, and companionship. Lyra realized that her journey had changed her fundamentally. Sleep had returned, but more than that, she had discovered resilience, courage, and the extraordinary impact of empathy. She had learned that even across galaxies, beings could understand one another, could heal one another, could transform loneliness into connection. And in the bond she shared with Elias, she finally felt complete. The twin moons of Lysara hung low, casting a soft silver glow over the city. Lyra stood at the edge of her chamber's balcony, inhaling the crisp night air. For the first time in her life, she felt truly at peace. The sleepless nights that had tormented her for so long were gone. No racing thoughts, no anxiety, no lingering dread, just quiet, stillness, and the soft, familiar presence of Elias beside her. He did not speak, yet she felt his understanding in every gesture, every glance, every shared breath. Tonight felt different from all the others. There was a sense of finality in the air, as if the universe itself was celebrating her victory over years of restlessness. Lyra had slept fully for the first time, again and again, each night building on the last, but tonight the peace ran deeper. Her mind, once a storm of endless activity, had become calm, vast, and open like the sky above. She could feel her body humming with vitality, her emotions steady and bright, her heart light. Elias adjusted the soft harmonic device one final time, setting it to a low, soothing rhythm. The vibrations traveled through the crystal floor, through her body, and into the very core of her being. Lyra lay down on the smooth surface, closing her eyes fully, and let herself surrender completely. There was no fear, no resistance, only the gentle pulse of the night, the steady presence of Elias, and a deep, unshakable trust. For the first time, sleep felt not like an effort, but a natural state, a gift she had always deserved but never believed she could have. In her dreams, Lysara transformed. The crystalline towers shimmered with colors she had never noticed before, soft pinks and golds, radiant blues and purples. The skies opened into vast oceans of stars, and she could feel their warmth, their light, their energy. Elias appeared in her dreams, walking beside her, guiding her through the flowing landscape. He did not speak, yet his presence said everything. "You are safe. You are not alone. You are enough." For the first time, Lyra believed it. Her dreams became a tapestry of her deepest wishes, running freely across alien forests, touching waters that sparkled like molten silver, laughing without restraint, and finally resting fully in the embrace of a world that no longer felt cold or indifferent. Each moment brought clarity, joy, and a sense of belonging she had never known. The endless nights that had once defined her existence were fading into memory, replaced by luminous serenity. When she awoke, the twin moons were low on the horizon, and the first light of a distant sun streaked across the sky. Her body was alive with energy, but her mind was calm, clear, and expansive. Lyra looked at Elias, who smiled at her softly, his hand reaching hers in a gentle, grounding gesture. "I did it," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "I can rest. I can live." And for the first time in years, she meant it with every fiber of her being. The city outside seemed to shimmer with newfound energy, as if Lysara itself had recognized her transformation. Citizens paused to notice her calm presence, whispering among themselves in awe. The girl who had wandered in endless sleepless nights, who had feared her own mind in solitude, now moved with serene confidence and quiet strength. Sleep had returned, yes, but what was more remarkable was the life she carried within herself. Lyra turned her gaze to the horizon, feeling the vastness of the universe stretch out before her. The endless nights were behind her, and the future seemed wide and luminous. She understood something profound. Connection, trust, and empathy could transcend worlds. Even across galaxies, understanding could heal wounds, soothe storms, and bring light to the darkest corners. Elia stood beside her quietly, a witness to her triumph, but it was Lyra who felt the transformation most deeply. She was no longer the girl trapped in sleepless nights. She was a being of courage, hope, and serenity. Her eyes sparkled under the moon's light, reflecting the peace she had fought so hard to achieve. And in that perfect, quiet moment, Lyra drifted once more into sleep, complete, endless, and beautiful, knowing that the nights would never haunt her again. The endless night had finally ended.